Hello, I'm Chai Hofilenia, and we will be chatting with Jose Maria Sison, the Chief Political Consultant of the National Democratic Front. Good afternoon, Joma. It's afternoon in where you are right now.
And good evening, Chai.
Yes, please call
Uh,
me Chai. I
it's a
wanted,
pleasure to be with you today.
thank
Yes.
you for joining us for this conversation. Before I ask you about politics and the heavy stuff, I just wanted to start first with your life in exile in Utrecht. How has it been?
Well, I have been here since 1987. That's a long period of time. I'm a recognized political refugee, but not a legally admitted one. Although I enjoy the protection of the European Convention on Human Rights. And I was a consultant of the Utrecht University for during my first 2 years until I applied for political asylum. Then I would occasionally, because I'm prohibited from taking a regular employment. And of course, I concentrate on research and writing, observing the Philippine situation. So I've never been detached from the Philippines. I make comments very frequently
How do you stay
on the
connected?
Philippine situation.
How do you stay connected with developments here in the Philippines?
What do I
Think
think
about developments.
of the developments? Well, there's a major kind of development. There is now a new president who says that he wishes to become the first left president in the history of the country. So that's fine with me. And I have conversed with him, and he on April 25th, and he told me about his plans.
Are you
And
happy? Are you happy about the election results? Did you vote for Mr. Duterte? I mean, would you have voted for him if there was an opportunity for you?
Would you have voted?
hmm?
Would you have voted for him if you had the opportunity?
uh, I would not say that publicly that I would vote because I belong to a revolutionary movement, which has nothing to do with the electoral process of the ruling system. But we do engage in peace negotiations, and therefore we study carefully those who vie for the position of president, and we always consider how we can deal with a president in order to advance the peace negotiations.
You were quoted in some news reports as saying that Duterte is probably the best Philippine president that we could have after Marcos. Did you really say that?
There was a garbled part of the
Question.
question.
Uulitin ko, there were news reports that quoted you as saying na si Duterte daw ang best Philippine president that we could have pagkatapos ni Marcos. Sinabi mo ba yun talaga?
The best since Marcos.
Yes? Did you really say
Well,
that?
Duterte has been one of the best mayors of the Philippines, but I certainly could not have said that he's the best president since Marcos because, you know, he has not even occupied the seat of the president yet, no? Uh,
But he's
of
practically
course,
president-elect.
the Duterte is strong on certain issues, but he humbly says that he's relatively weak on other issues,
How would you assess
economics. No,
him?
yes.
How would you assess him? Makakabuti ba siya para sa Pilipinas, or do you think this would be a step back for us?
I think he's a good president. If we make clear on which issues, on the issues of corruption and criminality, we can expect a lot of good from him, no? And he's quite modest, no? He says that he's only 75, 75, no? From grade 3 and upwards in his academics, but he's willing to employ people um, whom he looks up to, especially in economics and other fields of expertise. He knows, that means he is quite intelligent for him to recognize where he's weak and he has to avail of the expertise of other people. So
Uh,
he's not like Noynoy Aquino,
uh-huh.
He tries to give the impression that he's all round good, but really uh, he's a señorito, a cacique who sits back after appointing some people and he doesn't check. Now this guy is going to check his subordinates, even if these are um, better prepared than him on certain fields of expertise.
Rudy Duterte was your student in
Yes,
political thought in Lyceum.
Lyceum.
What are your memories or recollections of him as a student? Naalala mo pa ba?
He was laid back, no? So difficult to. He did not come out strongly. He did not come on strongly, and but I remember him as very attentive, although not so active, and in speaking up. But he reminded me that he chose Lyceum instead of Ateneo and La Salle because he wanted to learn from teachers like me. So that's a good point. And he said he went to the Lyceum because he wanted to be where the flashback, I mean, the flashpoint rather, the flashpoint of his generation was. And I remember that he attended the lecture series on nationalism. So I think he absorbed a lot. And he's proud to say that he learned about the principles of national sovereignty, democracy, and so on from me as his teacher in political science.
You had a conversation with him last April before the May elections. Could you tell us a little more about it? Siya ba yung tumawag or were you the one who initiated contact with him?
The people in Davao initiated the contact. They are progressive people who are in close touch with Mayor Duterte, and they were positioned at the place of Pastor Kiboloy. So Duterte came from Luzon, and he had to fly, and he was there. And I think he was also attending the birthday party of Kiboloy. But
Was it
it took time. We spoke for about half an hour.
Did he take the opportunity to invite you to come home and maybe engage in peace talks with his government if he wins?
Promised to come and visit me uh, uh, when and if he would win. No, but I think it's difficult. It's difficult for him to come over now. He's swamped with work, and the Davao City is practically bursting with political leaders from all parts of the country, job seekers, and other people. No, and so I think he has uh, no time to go to the Pope and to visit the Netherlands.
Oh, but the people around him have said that he might be visiting Rome before June 30, and it would be an opportunity probably to pass by Utrecht. So there has been no
That's
connection.
very good if that is still said, no?
Did you talk about policies or priorities that his government should address?
Well, he kept on saying that the country is feudal. He hates oligarchs, and he spoke of positive things to do, like expanding the free public education system and promoting agriculture. He made mention of those, first of all.
Are there,
We did not have much time. He did not have much time to elaborate on his program.
but do you think you would be able to work with his government?
I think if the ground is set for, let's say, revolutionaries to, or just legal progressive personalities to take the cabinet post offered, I suppose even the left wouldn't be able to contribute much. But I said that the basis must be laid through the peace negotiations. And there are certain things that can easily be done for the National Democratic Front to be very active in cooperating, even before the comprehensive agreements on social and economic reforms, political and constitutional reforms can be finished. The political prisoners must be released. There's a lot of talents among the imprisoned political prisoners, and in this connection, a mutual ceasefire can be arranged to take effect immediately. Uh, we can work out a declaration or a short agreement to lay the basis for the mutual ceasefire. And I think that would be something very good that will be welcomed by the Filipino people right away.
Pero yung
And I think
release, yeah, go ahead.
Duterte, President Duterte, is timing this mutual ceasefire with the NDF with the mutual ceasefire with the Bangsamoro armies or the Bangsamoro National Liberation movements like the MILF and MNLF. And in fact, they have an existing uh, the government has an existing ceasefire agreement with those forces. Maybe there can be a renewal of the agreement on ceasefire.
Will the release of political prisoners be a precondition for any further involvement with his government or any sort of cooperation with him?
It is not a precondition, more serious than setting a precondition for something. It's an obligation. It is the political prisoners must be released in compliance with existing agreements. And President Duterte and the appointed chief negotiator, Silvestre Bebot Bello, have already said that they will respect the existing agreements. And among these are, of course, the Comprehensive Agreement on Respect for Human Rights and International Humanitarian Law, which prohibits trumping up charges of common crimes against people who are referred to as having something to do with the NPA and with the rebellion. No? That's the Hernandez political offense doctrine. And then, of course, the political consultants who have been surveilled and arrested should be released immediately in accordance with the joint agreement on safety and immunity guarantees. So I think if we are after a common good, something good for the entire Filipino people, like a just and lasting peace, so we can unite and develop the country, I think liberating political prisoners is a small matter. Cory Aquino in 1986 did it. Ramos did it in 1992. And so I believe Duterte is not of a lesser metal than Aquino and Ramos. You know, he has strong character. He's a lawyer. He knows the legal basis for the releases, and the NDFP is willing anyway
There
to
had
engage in mutual ceasefire, which is
yes,
a big thing.
there had been past talks in the past with previous governments, but somehow the talks would always collapse at some point. What are the lessons that I think that you think we should bear in mind as we enter into the possibility of the NDF entering into peace talks again with the new government?
Yeah, what's good about the new government is that it is harnessing people whom we negotiated with so successfully. Teresa and Bello were involved in the successful in the peace negotiations that produced uh, all the major agreements, tenet agreements. Um, the two agreements during the time of Arroyo were relatively minor, but the major agreements done during the time of Ramos, Teresa and Bello worked effectively with their NDFP counterparts. So it's good to have them again at the other side of the table. We know each other very well, and they know how to defend the interests of their own government, and at the same time, they recognize what's reasonable between the Manila government and the National Democratic Front of the Philippines. They are not, obsessed with trying to trip the NDF and push the NDF over the cliff. No, they're not. They are interested in reforms. They're very secular minded. Huh? They know how the world runs, and they know what are they have a political sense. They know what the people need
So
and
you
demand. So Deles is I do not know from what sphere of the universe he gets inspiration from.
so you
It's
essentially
not
welcome you essentially welcome the roles that Bello and Mr. Dureza would be playing in the ceasefire or in talks.
Duresa will be the peace advisor, and um, Bello uh, will be the chief negotiator. And I think Bello wants to have a direct line to the president, just like what he had during the time of Ramos. Um, but anyway, Teresa uh, is quite understanding, and when the things are presented in a reasonable way, they get interested, they perk up, and that's also the attitude of the NDF. These are people with a good sense of the situation and the needs of the people.
What
The common point of reference is the interest of the people.
what do you think
It's not a game of outwitting the other side.
All right. What do you think differentiates Mr. Duterte from the past presidents, including, well, President Aquino and Mr. Ramos?
Aquino belongs to shall we say, a combination with Ninoy, uh, who were, shall we say, who knew how the political game runs, and they had a long experience in fighting the dictatorship. But then, even Aquino just minded, such issues as corruption and civil liberties. He never dealt with, the fundamental problems of foreign monopoly domination, landlordism, and so among the three big problems, it's only corruption, bureaucratic corruption that He minded. And then, so when Cory Aquino became president, he was surrounded with uh, pro-imperialist characters and also fellow oligarchs from the big comprador and landlord classes. No, uh, Duterte, in comparison to the Aquino, should be, he does not come from a poor family. He is the son of a governor, but he's like Prince Hal in his Shakespearean play. He knows street people, and he curses like street people. He's a good sense, and he's not so interested in accumulating property. So Trillanes was very much in the wrong when he tried to accuse Duterte of of accumulating wealth. No, he's very generous. When he has something, he gives away easily. So he has a generous spirit in comparison to, let's say, the Aquino Cojuangco, greedy kind of family. And now Ramos, you know, got tired of a life of let's say, rough with people who are in rebellion. No? As he matured and became president, he became mindful of the root causes of the armed conflict, and then he had everything. He benefited from the armed conflict. No, you know, uh, he became president, and then he was generous in spirit enough and broad-minded enough to recognize that there was an opportunity for historical greatness by trying to solve the armed conflict. And he was agreeable to addressing the roots of the armed conflicts. That's Ramos. And then he knew the problems, and he assigned people who could negotiate with the NDF. Mang Aping Yap, he was the first emissary. He was also the emissary of Aquino.
Yeah.
Ramos used to, undercut Apeng, or let's say, he used to impose certain conditions. But eventually, when Ramos himself became president, he wanted to achieve something in the field of solving the problem of the armed conflict. And this is the style of Mang Apeng. Before he would leave for the Netherlands, he would talk to the general legal consultant of the NDFP in Manila, and he would ask, "So this is my mission from the president. What can I bring home?"
Yeah.
After going to direct, no? So then, things are discussed in advance. And he would come over, and because of the previous discussions, we know that there is already a certain level of agreement. And we always um, uh, uh, gave him some in a manner of speaking, some gift to bring home, no? A mutual understanding on things, and eventually complete agreements.
So there could have been an agreement then.
Yes?
There could
What
have been.
agreement?
There could
The
have
biggest
been.
agreement. I beg your pardon? I
There,
didn't get it.
there could have been an agreement then under his government.
I don't get it.
There
Could
could
you repeat, please?
there could have been an agreement then because you seemed to see positive signs and there was a lot of goodwill.
Yeah, there was a lot of goodwill. There's a willingness on both sides. So we accomplished the biggest kind of agreement. That is the comprehensive agreement on respect for human rights and international humanitarian law. That's supposed to be the first of four substantive items in the agenda. And then, of course, you know, before making that big agreement, we had to do a lot of work on agreements to make possible the flow of negotiations. We had the joint declarations the joint declaration named after The Hague, um, which set the aim of the negotiations, the substantive agenda, and then the general method of negotiating. Then we had another agreement on the rules, ground rules for meetings and consultations. Then we also had an agreement to elaborate on the sequence, formation, operationalization of the reciprocal working committees, which were supposed to do the spade work, the drafting of agreements, and so many agreements were made.
I'd like to throw some questions here that we're getting from social media. There's one question here. How do you feel about President Duterte's apparent neoliberal economic policies?
Well, that sparked some exchanges, but there is already a level of agreement on that. There's an understanding that Duterte government is open to injecting um, reforms in his program. Um, the 8 points may be reformulated, and they're only eight. Maybe they reserve 9 and 10. I mean to say they allotted some space for national industrialization and land reform. So anyway, there is a willingness on the part of the Duterte government. We are told that is simply the economic agenda. The program has still to be worked out.
Okay. We've also heard that there's been some offer of some cabinet posts to to you. Um, which of these are you most interested in?
No, I'm not interested in any cabinet post. There is a group or a committee already studying the possibilities of letting highly qualified people with the spirit of serving the people and who are honest and diligent. Uh, I won't run ahead of that group. There are certain conditions, I mean, circumstances for accepting the post. Maybe we think, maybe it's possible to for some communists, or at the least, legal progressive people who are very qualified to accept the post upon the recommendation. And that's the point for doing that would be, after the mutual ceasefire, there would be already a good ground. People in the movement will not accuse us of a sellout, joining the other side while the peace negotiations are going on. There is, accepting the post, uh, especially by patriotic and progressive people who are liked by the revolutionary movement, cannot be seen as sellout, but uh, it is the accepting the post could be seen as promoting the peace negotiations.
Would
So it's not a sellout. After the peace negotiations, then when there is already a full-fledged government of national unity, peace and development, and uh, communists and simply anti-imperialists can openly participate, and I think there will be an allotment of spaces for a broad range of people. No.
are there specific people you have in mind who you would recommend to the Duterte cabinet?
There's quite a number, and if
Who are the
some,
top
and
three who would top of
they would
mind?
be annoyed with me. I think the important thing is I must not run ahead of the group that is making a long list and then eventually the short list. And then ultimately someone would have to be chosen from the short list. I think responsible people are at work, and then they will have to mind under what conditions the recommendations will be made.
Here's another question from social media. This is from @Divs Velarde. The question is about the pseudo left who's been working in the government. Is there any hindrance for some further agreements with the left?
I beg your, is there a further hindrance?
Is there any hindrance for some further agreements with the left?
There is no hindrance. The NDF is ready to cover the three remaining items in the substantive agenda: social and economic reforms. Uh, that's the meat of the peace negotiations that will serve to satisfy the hunger of people for social reforms. So, and then political and constitutional reforms have to be discussed so to clarify by what authority the social and economic reforms shall be carried out. And then, of course, the reforms, the political and constitutional reforms should give free play, full play to the empowerment of the workers and peasants. And you know, Duterte has made a good signal. He's willing to give the agrarian reform and labor to communists. And that's the intention is very good. The final item in the agenda is the end of hostilities. That means the permanent end of hostilities, which would be an advance on the temporary mutual ceasefire.
I think the question also here is about the fragmentation within the left. How do you plan to address this so that you have a semblance of unity and, well, you have more leverage insofar as demands for or requests for reform would be is concerned?
A journalist asked me, why are you being taken so seriously? Uh, well, I said, you cannot trifle with the revolutionary movement, especially when you have an ever worsening crisis in the world and in the country. And you have to look at the movement as consisting of millions of people under the leadership of a revolutionary party. And this party has a united front organization, and more importantly, it has the People's Army. And this People's Army is in more than 120 guerrilla fronts. And it has thousands, far more than the claims of the military, which, which always minimizes the strength of the new People's Army. And then there are mass organizations of workers, peasants, uh, youth, women, professionals, and so on in the underground. And these provide support to a people's government that exists in the countryside, that is
How
based in the
strong,
countryside.
how strong is the New People's Army today? Because the military would say that you have diminished forces.
I beg your pardon?
How strong is the New People's Army today?
Well, it is, the military keeps on saying inconsistently, oh, NPA is only 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. No, it's more than that. I'm not at liberty to give the figure, but you can think at least it must be approaching 10,000 or about 10,000. And, well, what makes the NPA strong is not only, the fully armed, full-time fighters. Uh, there are auxiliary forces like the people's militia, which acts like the police force in the barangays, no. And then at the same time you have self-defense units within mass organizations, Of course, even if they are armed with inferior weapons, the People's Militia and the self-defense units, still they are a force to reckon with.
Here's another question from social media. This is from at Joyce Obayan. Are you willing to lay down NPA arms for peace's sake within the next few months?
Well, a mutual ceasefire that is temporary does not involve disarming the People's Army. But what is important there is that offensives are no longer taken by either side or by both sides of the armed conflict, and peace is already achieved. So the problem for a revolutionary movement, if it is in a hurry to disarm itself, even before the reforms are made clear, and long before the reforms are carried out, then the those in power will just dismiss the revolutionary forces later on and advise them to just contact their favorite congressman. And of course, nothing will happen. So the main consideration of the revolutionary movement is to look after the rights and interests of the people. And that's the main thing.
What do you think should be prioritized by this new government? You mentioned a lot of reforms a while ago. In very general terms, you spoke about social reforms and economic reforms. But what do you think should be given attention first?
With regard to social and economic reforms, national industrialization, and genuine land reform must be attended to. And these are bourgeois democratic reforms, not socialist yet, no? And there are ways of orchestrating the positive forces in the country. State and private Filipino capitalists can conjoin to take the initiative in industrializing the country. And then there may be an opening to foreign investments and foreign technology. And but we don't allow any one, two, or three foreign powers to dominate the Philippines. We can make use of a variety of countries as sources of technology.
I was
And
just
then, so that's the main thing in terms of effecting economic and social development. With regard to political and economic reforms, I think it's a matter of giving way to the peaceful relations of various democratic forces, uh, uh, especially the forces of the left and the middle. And of course, there has to be a certain toleration even for those outside, no, of the left and the middle, so long as they do not wage their own armed conflict, no. They don't wage their own armed struggle, no. Of course, there is the right that can be tolerated so long as it does not arm itself or manipulate the reactionary or the armed forces within the government. No, so anyway, the point is things can be settled. Elections would become more democratic in the sense that workers and peasants would be allowed to participate fully through their parties and mass organizations. Maybe there can be a system of subsidizing political parties so that it's not only the parties of the oligarchs that would prevail. No?
some
There are many.
okay.
I cannot run ahead of the negotiators in the making of the comprehensive agreement on political and social constitutional reforms.
Some people would say that communism is dead. It's become irrelevant.
Communism is not the issue now. Uh, Even socialism is not possible if you don't deal yet with the problem of foreign domination and you know the large feudal backlog. So it's not a matter of eliminating the capitalist class. As a matter of fact, we need to promote patriotic and let them develop the country industrially. So it's not so even socialism yet. The point is to industrialize the country and accomplish land reform in order to create a large domestic market, and some farming can be used to produce food, and the other kind of farming would be used to produce some raw materials for the industries.
Mr. Duterte has described himself as the first socialist president. Is that a good sign?
Well, I think being the first socialist president is a gallant uh, self-image. Of course, sometimes socialism is defined as making more as making possible more social benefits, especially for the working people, and social services. For instance, in Venezuela and other countries, socialism practically amount to making a social welfare system, and the people need social measures to improve their level of life. Why not? That's necessary in order to maintain the just and lasting peace that we hanker for.
Do you see enough incentives for you to come home soon?
I think when there is already a mutual ceasefire, I will be able to go home.
So,
Just mark my words. If the political prisoners are released and there's a mutual ceasefire, I will go home for sure.
what if one of the two only is met? Like, kung kunyari sabihin ni Mr. Duterte, okay, ceasefire muna tayo after he becomes president. And it would be, well, a declaration of goodwill on his part. Parang confidence building measure. Will that be
Those two are
sufficient?
inseparable twins.
So dapat yung dalawa.
Yes, the release of all the political prisoners and the mutual ceasefire, they are the inseparable twins. And that those precede an accelerated plan, no? A plan for accelerating peace negotiations.
What is the future of the left, you think, under this new administration?
The future of the left is bright because the president, no less, is willing to accommodate the left. So at the back, there is a consideration of worsening crisis in the global capitalist system, and also inside the country would be affected. We are now on the third wave of the crisis that began in 2008. No, the Yes, I mean, if I may explain further, the first wave was caused by the mortgage meltdown in 2008.
Yes.
Then that affected Europe, and then Europe got into, the sovereign debt crisis. Now, the third wave, the emerging markets headed by China is now China and the other emerging markets, so-called, are now in big trouble because of the bursting of the China bubble.
So, nagkamali ba ang China to open itself to capitalism?
This is the way how it works, how the crisis,
What's the next?
That's your phone.
Hello?
Yes, you were saying.
the so-called higher growth rate of 6 to 7% during the time of Aquino was something artificial. It was created by hot money coming in. In 2014, uh, the portfolio investment started to flow out. And then if the U.S. will keep on raising the interest rate on loans, then there will be an increase in the uh, debt burden of the Philippines. And so I think the crisis should be turned into a challenge, an opportunity for the president to create new things to develop the Philippine economy. If the left will participate in the building of the nation, developing the economy, we can expect a better life for the Filipino people.
Maybe just the last question. The Philippines has been having difficult relations with China over conflicting maritime claims. And Duterte has recently said that we should enter into bilateral talks rather than have an arbitration. Do you think this is the right approach insofar as China is concerned?
I think President Duterte corrected himself. He's interested in the prospective victory of the Philippines before the Arbitral Tribunal. And, you know, if in case we win there, or in the main we win, there are no provisions that would put us somehow at a disadvantage. If on the whole we win the case, then I think China will go into tantrums for a while, and then and then China would be very considerate of the fact that it cannot offend more than 500 million Southeast Asians. It has to deal fairly with the Philippines. I think that the best time to engage China in bilateral talks and agreements would be after we beat them before the arbitral tribunal. Uh,
Okay, just pahabol question lang siguro. Um, any last messages to the Filipino youth of this generation? Ang tawag sa kanila millennials.
a last message about
To the Filipino youth, like siguro if you can compare the Filipino youth of this generation to the youth of your generation, ano ba yung pinagkaiba and how do you communicate or ano yung message mo to them?
well, I would call on the Filipino people, especially the youth, to support the new government and new arrangements that can be made with the revolutionary forces to the extent that new things come into being and into force for the benefit of the Filipino people in terms of upholding, defending, and promoting their rights and interests. I think the Filipino people should have clear ideas about how to uplift themselves and the left, so-called, no? The progressive forces that operate legally as well as the revolutionary forces that wage armed struggle have programs that provide solutions to the problems. These proposals for solving the basic problems of the Filipino people must be taken fully into account if we are to advance as a nation. So let's all help each other to the extent that all the major forces will be determined to unite and cooperate with each other, especially in a government of national unity, peace, and development.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for speaking with us. Thank you for listening. We've been speaking with Jose Maria Sison, or Joma Sison, of the National Democratic Front. Join us again when we have our next Rappler Talk. Thank you, Joma.
Thank you, Chai.